I want to be the first to congratulate our great, now I can say, Vice President-elect of the United States, J.D. Vance.
Sometimes fate strikes without warning, and today it was not only ordinary people who experienced this, but also representatives of the presidential administration, including J.D. Vance. He found himself in a particularly difficult situation. According to analysts, Trump's latest statement could destroy his career. Trump publicly set up Vance in the most effective way possible. Even those who were upset by their personal problems today can take comfort in the fact that J.D. Vance got no less than he deserved. Donald Trump has just taken a decisive step that has left one of his most loyal supporters in the lurch. In an unexpected turn of events that could shake perceptions of loyalty, Trump has publicly abandoned Vance. Now the question is, will this be the beginning of the end of Vance's political career, or just another colorful chapter in the never-ending political spectacle surrounding Trump? In any case, events promise to unfold rapidly.
Now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country.
Donald Trump, demonstrating his usual determination and toughness, is once again seeking to rewrite the rules of the political game. In this scenario, J.D. Vance is merely a pawn sacrificed in a major chess game. Once a fierce critic of Trump, Vance has gone from opponent to loyal ally and vice presidential candidate. However, Trump has long been known for turning former enemies into soldiers, only to sacrifice them when it suits him.
Secretary Dustin suggested that with tariff rates as high as they are now, it's effectively an embargo trade between the United States and China. Do you see it that way?
That's true. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. Not going to be that high.
As if following a script written in advance, Donald Trump easily sends J.D. Vance into the thick of political chaos, with an enthusiasm usually seen only in the most tasteless reality shows. On the agenda is the introduction of new tariffs. And we're not talking about simple restrictions, but measures that could drive entrepreneurs to despair, destroy businesses, and force ordinary Americans to tighten their belts out of fear. And when the consequences of this trade policy become apparent, the responsibility will fall on J.D. Vance's shoulders.
Destroyed China, was taking us for a ride, and just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're going to be very good to China, have a great relationship with President Xi, but they would make billions and billions and billions of dollars a year, and they would build their military out of the United States and what they made. So
the Trump administration is not only considering the creation of a special working group, but also plans, if approved, to appoint Vice President J.D. Vance as its head, the person who will be responsible for implementing the new tariff policy. In essence, he is being offered the role of chief consequence manager, rather than actual leader. When Trump announced the new tariffs, it was not so much the launch of an initiative as a trap. He seemed to have quietly placed Vance on a minefield and quickly retreated to a safe distance. It is worth noting how timely this was. Just as J.D., Vance, showing enviable political flexibility, publicly renounced his previous criticism of Trump, expressing sincere remorse for his past statements.
but we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that.
The main problem is that J.D. Vance has now been tasked with defending these tariffs as if he personally devised some brilliant economic plan. It's like sending someone to put out a fire they didn't start and then demanding that they smile for the cameras. These tariffs are almost certain to deal a serious blow to the economy. And now J.D. Vance is the official face of the impending disaster. Good luck to him in trying to explain all this to voters.
Well, if you go back a little bit, Lawrence, remember during the first Trump administration, everybody said that Trump's tariffs were going to be inflationary back then. What actually happened? We had 1.5% inflation, we had the fastest growing economy in a generation, and we had the beginning of a manufacturing renaissance in the United States of America. Then, of course, we had 4 terrible years of the Biden administration. But I think it's useful for all of us to step back and ask ourselves, what has the globalist economy gotten the United States of America? And the answer is fundamentally it's based on 2 principles: incurring a huge amount of debt to buy things that other countries make for us. And to make it a little bit more crystal clear, we borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture.
Credit where credit is due. Few people can turn a brewing crisis into a grand spectacle with such ease as Donald Trump. This time, J.D. Vance found himself center stage, now cast as the desperate defender of a policy doomed to fail. Vance risks becoming an easy target for attacks from both sides of the political spectrum. After all, Trump has long been known for his ability to use his allies as lightning rods when things start to fall apart. The tariff initiative at the center of the scandal was originally based on shaky logic: raise the cost of foreign goods to stimulate demand for American products. However, the reality is that domestic producers are simply unable to meet market demand in full, and it is J.D. Vance who will have to take the brunt of the blow when the consequences of this policy begin to affect the economy.
China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge.
What is truly astonishing is that Trump probably does not even consider the consequences of his decisions. He acts like a man who issues orders from his secure fortress, without considering how they will affect those below him. At the same time, J.D. Vance, trying to justify questionable policies, worries that this could seriously affect his political ambitions. What adds fuel to the fire is the instability of Trump's policies and their consequences.
The last few weeks have seen announcements of huge tariff increases, the postponement of these tariff increases, the cancellation of these tariff increases, the reimposition of these tariffs, a huge amount of uncertainty.
Until recently, J.D. Vance was one of Donald Trump's most vocal critics. His speeches sounded almost like an indictment of the administration's chaotic economic policies, and he built his reputation on this, a politician who was not afraid to tell the truth. Vance never missed an opportunity to emphasize that he considered Trump an egocentric leader prone to mistakes and impulsive decisions. His attacks were so fierce that even serious crises seemed less dramatic in comparison. But everything changed. At some point, Vance made a decision that turned everything upside down. Instead of remaining an independent voice, he chose to become Trump's ally, quickly joining his team and getting a shot at the vice presidency. Now Vance has to learn an unpleasant truth. When you abandon your own convictions for personal gain, sooner or later you become a hostage to the mistakes of others.
And so one of the takeaways is not just that the Republican Party base is somehow fundamentally flawed in a way that's unique in American political history, it's that Trump is a really bad candidate and, frankly, I think a really bad person.
Fast forward to 2024.
I don't hide from that. I was certainly skeptical of Donald Trump in 2016, but President Trump was a great president and he changed my mind. I think he changed the minds of a lot of Americans.
If you think about it, there is a strange irony in this story. J.D. Vance is the very man who once made a name for himself by sharply criticizing Donald Trump, turning his attacks on him into his political calling card. He spent a long time fiercely exposing Trump as a symbol of all the problems in the party and tirelessly repeating that it was leaders like him who were dragging it down.
Vance was at one point very critical of Trump, calling him, quote, unfit for office.
He called him a, quote, cynical a-hole.
There is definitely an element of Donald Trump's support that has its basis in racism or xenophobia.
I never liked him.
But when the opportunity to get closer to real power presented itself, Vance did not hesitate to switch sides to the very person he had ridiculed for so many years. His former convictions were forgotten as quickly as they had been embraced. For the chance to enter Trump's inner circle, he abandoned his principles and rushed to take his place alongside him. Now, watching as new tariff initiatives destroy the economy, Vance finds himself in an absurd position. He has become the face of the very policies he once considered destructive. The irony of fate is that trying to jump into someone else's project for personal gain often ends up with having to take responsibility for its collapse.
So first of all, let me give you a very precise example, and then two, let me try to understand the theory behind it. Number one, we actually already had a president who imposed tariffs on China, who brought back American manufacturing, and when that president, Donald J. Trump, was president, inflation was 1.5%. So we know that tariffs can protect American workers and also keep inflation low. That's the first thing. The second thing here is we have to ask ourselves, okay, let's say you're a factory and you're deciding whether to invest in the United States of America or to manufacture in China using literal slave labor. I mean, people making $3 a day. I don't want American workers making $3 a day. I want them to earn the kind of wage that can support a family, okay?
Trump has never been one to take responsibility for his decisions. When things get out of hand, he prefers to find someone else to take the blame. Right now, that person is J.D. Vance. The irony is that it is now Vance who has been tasked with explaining and justifying policies that he did not develop and may not even have supported in the first place. He finds himself in the position of someone who has been entrusted with cleaning up the mess left by others, without being given any leverage or room for maneuver. This is an old trick. Create a problem, step into the shadows, and let someone else take the hit. While the economy is under pressure from the new tariffs, all questions will be directed not at Trump, but at Vance. He will have to respond as if everything that is happening is his personal plan.
Make the stuff in China at $3 a day, and then you try to bring it into the United States and you undercut the wages of American workers. But if you impose a fat tariff on people who are trying to import that stuff, then American factories and American corporations invest in American workers. That creates good jobs, it creates good products, and it makes us more self-reliant.
It seems that the only thing Vance has really succeeded at is repeating Trump's memorized phrases without asking any unnecessary questions. This all fits into a familiar tactic, creating the illusion of simple solutions to complex problems. In the case of tariffs, it's the promise that they will magically eliminate trade imbalances. Even though outside of this rhetoric, experts are just shaking their heads. It is hard to believe that these economic measures were conceived by people who are even remotely familiar with the realities of the market. But now it is Vance who has been tasked with convincing the country that this is all a well-thought-out and promising move. He has become the face of a strategy that perhaps even its author does not believe in.
As the president says, Lawrence, these foreign companies, they charge us ridiculous tariffs. They engage in a lot of non-tariff practices like currency manipulation. That has been awful for Main Street in the United States of America. It's meant those diners, their customers, don't have jobs anymore. It meant those great steel mills, those great auto plants have closed down and their workers have been laid off.
J.D. Vance seems to have genuinely believed at some point that he had become a key figure in Donald Trump's political spectacle. Perhaps he decided that he was no longer just a sidekick, but a full-fledged partner on stage, almost an equal. But as it turned out, his role was not a leading one. He was merely a backdrop, a detail in the overall picture directed by a man whose interests never extend beyond his own image.
Yeah, he said some bad things about me, but that was before he knew me, and then he fell in love.
Trump is once again employing an old strategy. He creates chaos, launches a high-profile idea, and then steps aside, leaving others to deal with the consequences. In this case, we are referring to tariff policy, which has been presented to the public as a means of protecting American manufacturers. But behind the slogans lies a harsh reality: rising prices, supply problems, and angry allies around the world. It is now up to Vance to stand before the public and explain why the economy is feeling worse. While pretending that everything is going according to plan, he finds himself in the role of a politician who has been tasked with defending a decision he had no part in making, and that could turn out to be a disaster.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver.
Meanwhile, Trump seems more concerned with maintaining the illusion of control and influence than with actual governance. His talk of great negotiations with China sounds less like confidence and more like an attempt to hide the fact that no one is particularly eager to engage in serious dialogue with him. And that bothers him, much more than he wants to admit. And J.D. Vance, he is left with political baggage that did not even belong to him. with an initiative that threatens to become his personal defeat. It all ended predictably, like in a poorly written script where you could guess the ending from the first episode. Only now it's not a show. It's his real political career with much more at stake than just ratings.
Congratulations, and we're thrilled to be joined by a proud Marine Corps veteran Vice President J.D. Vance. J.D.? Where's J.D.? What the hell happened to J.D.? Because he was just here. He must have gotten a call from China. He'll be here.